3 weeks down mean we are halfway through season 5 of the NWBA. Teams are really starting to heat up. We've got some tight competition at the top of the Ruby League. We talk about New Moon's big week, all that and more. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 5 of the NWBA Wonder Room. Week 4 is upon us. On today's episode, we are going to review Week 3, talking about Pokemon of the Week, including a very special Pokemon of the Week. Over a brand new batch of power rankings, talk about the final trade of the season, as well as look at some more free agents. Don't go anywhere. Wonder Room starts now. All right, let's get right on into it. Week 3 is come and gone. Pretty interesting week, particularly at the top of the standings. Once again, it was a second week of interleague play. Some pretty interesting results all across the board. 3 very good 3-game sets that were either recorded to Vasser's YouTube channel or on Versus Seeker. Lava Ridge and Mali City was a very good 3-game set that Mali City was able to take at the end. Lentamaz versus Lavender Town and Burbank versus Mount Hokulani both recorded on Versus Seeker. So some really good action this week. More forfeits than we've seen in any other week, but still forfeits as a whole are down compared to what they were in seasons past, which is very good. As we all know, Chris still on vacation, so unfortunately he had to forfeit this round, but he is going to be back Thursday of this week, so you should see Alfrenada back in action for week 4, as well as Himalaya City and Newbark going to a draw. Couldn't meet up at the proper time. Happens. So as we look at the standings halfway through the season, Akala Island, only team with double-digit wins, 10-1 start for Vasser. That is phenomenal. Hasn't lost since opening night to Spike. That being said, hasn't really gained any ground. Spike, as well as Nico, New Moon Island, right behind him at 9-2. Sunny Shore off an 8-game win streak. New Moon Island, 4-game win streak. Veilstone has engineered quite the turnaround, sitting at 6-5 on the current 3-game win streak. Holding down that 4 spot very well. 5 and 6 are tied between Lava Ridge and Lavender Town, both stumbling after that first week. Lava Ridge lost 4 in a row, Treasure Town 2, and bringing up the rear, Alfrenada, like we mentioned. Chris hasn't been here to play his games, so I had to forfeit this week. And Lentamaz Town, 6 in a row, still has not found that first real set win outside of that Metronome battle versus Alfrenada, which is tough. Over in the Sapphire League, a bit of a shakeup. Himalaya was now won 5 straight. They're at the top of the leaderboard, 9-2. Not an unfamiliar position at all for Kobu, but didn't start off that way, but has found his way back to the top. Mali City right behind it, 8-2-1. That one draw against Alfrenada, unfortunately, kind of, may or may not come into effect later in the season. As of right now, only half a game behind Humalao. Mount Hokulani, tough week, has lost 3 in a row. They now fall to 7-4, but still sitting pretty solidly at that 3 spot. Burbank and Lavender Town both at 6-5. Big gap between them and Newbark Town. Was in a decent position. 4-game losing streak, now finds himself at 3-8. Newbark sitting at 2-8-1, and finally Humalao City at 1-9-1. Being that we are halfway through the season now you can start thinking about potential playoff matchups and who's slated to be where, as well as that ever creeping relegation match. But you can see that there's a very clear divide between the top of the league and the bottom of the league. So nothing is set in stone quite yet. Although, at least in the Sapphire Division, the playoff picture looks to be somewhat clear in terms of who's making it in. Just a matter of where they're going to be. But again, we still have half the season to play. Anybody can engineer a turnaround and flip that very quickly. Pokemon of the Week in the Ruby League goes to Iron Moth. There were quite a few contenders once again in the Ruby League. Many of them New Moon Island players. But this week it goes to Iron Moth, 14 KOs. That was tied for the most of any mon this week. 26 points, which was in total best in the league. These are the big ones. 6.5 points per game and 3.5 KOs per game. Both records for Season 5. Iron Moth only played 4 games last week and still managed to put up 14 KOs and 26 points. Extremely impressive performance there from Nico. At the same time, we all kind of knew this is what Iron Moth was going to do. There's a reason it got banned so heavily at the beginning of the season. And now that it finally got a little bit of playing time, it has been a force to be reckoned with. So not at all surprised to see Iron Moth in this position whatsoever. Over in the Sapphire League, a little bit of history. For the first time in NWBA history, we have a mon that has won Pokemon of the Week in back-to-back weeks. Thunderous Eye, I believe, only the third ever mon to even win multiple Pokemon of the Weeks in the same season, following Poltegeist in Season 1 for Freezington and Inteleon in Season 4 for 2 separate teams, which is quite a feat in and of itself. But Thunderous Eye had another good week, 3rd in the league with 13 KOs, as well as 23 points. So that comes out to 2.9 points per game and 1.6 KOs per game, which was 5th in the league. So, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Kevin has been able to put in good work with Thunderous Eye, and this mon has now won back-to-back Pokemon of the Week, which I'd like to think would put it at the top of the MVP ladder in the Sapphire League. Again, we're halfway through the season, so now you can start looking at these mons and thinking about who maybe could win MVP. Obviously, Ruby League is a bloodbath. There's so many mons that could win it, but right now in the Sapphire League, I'd like to think Thunderous Eye is the clubhouse leader. So, we move on to the power rankings for Week 4. Moving to the top of the leaderboard, Akala Island, undefeated week, 2nd in a row. Again, after losing to Sunny Shore in the opening week of the season, they have not lost a single set. Very impressive performance by Vasser, his best as a GM, and they have the reins currently. Again, not much leeway though. Sunny Shore and New Moon Island bringing up at the rear, coming up right behind at 2 and 3. Both also posted undefeated weeks, so they both sit at 9 and 2, as well as Humalau, the top of Sapphire League, sitting at number 4, also an undefeated week. It was a really, really good week for the top of the league. I think these are right now the 4 best teams. It's just a matter of who exactly is where. And again, very important that 3 of them play in the same league. Mally City drops down just 1 spot to 5. 8-2-1, still had a very good week, but that 1 loss did come at the hands of Humalau. So Humalau now has the head-to-head tiebreaker. Currently, obviously, they have to play them twice this season, but Humalau getting that win, has a better record, got to put them above. But Mally City still going very strong. 8-2-1 is a fantastic record. Mount Hokulani stumbled this week, 1 and 3, was rough. All 3 of their losses were to Game 3, so it's not like it was a totally awful performance. Just, these were games that could have been winnable and just didn't swing that way. But 7-4 still a great record. Mount Hokulani still in a pretty good spot. That's why they sit at 6. Few teams sitting at 6 and 5. Veilstone sitting at number 7. Again, the turnaround that Willis orchestrated after week 1 has been very impressive. Things are starting to click. The team is coming together. I think he's finally assembled the roster that he really wants to work with. And he's been pretty good. You know, he sits quite a ways away from the top of the Ruby League, but very well could play spoiler. The rematches should not be easy, especially considering that he will get Iron Valiant in those matches. Burbank currently sits at number 8. Again, 3-1, very good week. Had a big win over Mount Hokulani on Versus Seeker. Muffin's first legitimate win over Kami in 8 attempts, which is crazy to think about. But like we said early, in previous weeks, we think that this combination of Dom as a head coach and Muffin as a player can get some things done, and we're really starting to see a Muffin pulling off some big wins. So currently sitting at 8. Lavender Town drops 1 spot. Still very good at 6-5. Just out of all these 6-5 teams, technically the weakest. Logan's still a solid team. 3-1. That's a good week. Nothing really more to say. Holding down the playoff spot very well. This is where the big gap comes into play. The drop between 9 and 10 on down is pretty notable. Treasure Town sits at 10 again. 1 in 3 weeks. ZB still sliding. It's been hard to figure things out. I don't know if it's the team composition or what, but it's been a pretty rough sledding for ZB. Again, still I think a good enough player that he can orchestrate a turnaround in this back half of the season. Just right now things have not gone his way. Currently sits at 4-7. Lava Ridge slides down to 11. Avery's really had a rough time. Went undefeated in the first week of the season. Has only won 1 set since then. Played some close games, some really close sets. Took Valley City to game 3. 2-0, but super duper close against Akala Island. Like, it just, something just hasn't really been meshing. But again, this is another faction that their best player has been banned many times, and they're gonna get them back in these rematches. So you will see Walking Wake. You'll see Walking Wake soon. So again, Lava Ridge 4-7, but I think can orchestrate a turnaround. That last Ruby League spot right now is a tie between Treasure Town and Lava Ridge, so that is very much open for the taking. Over at 12, New Bark moves up. Rhino 1-2 in 1 week. Not a fantastic week. Unfortunately had to draw with Humala City, but did get the win over New Bark Town. So as of right now, Rhino is now the mayor of New Bark. Again, him and CJ will have to play later on in the week, but that's a good head-to-head win. Morale booster, so to speak. That's why he sits up at 12. CJ dropping down to 3-8 of New Bark Town. Winless week. Really bad position to be in, considering he was 3-4 just a week ago. In a position to, maybe get some big wins and get some ground in the Sapphire League playoff race. Instead, the exact opposite. Didn't win a single set this week, and now got to make a tough climb to get back in that playoff spot. All for Nada drops to 14. Again, don't really need to bear repeating. You know the situation. And again, he will be back this week, so you will see All for Nada jump back into things. We'll see if Chris can orchestrate a turnaround. 1-9-1 is a pretty bad record, but 11 games left. You can get a winning record off of that. It would be really hard, but it's not impossible to see. And then Lentos and Humala City once again sitting at 15-16. Trey went winless in the game that he did play this week. And the draw to New Bark sitting at 16. Lentomas 0-4. Again, waiting on things to finally click. Because we've seen Keg's gameplay and we know that there's something there and he's gotten close. He's had some good games. It just hasn't swung his way. This very easily could be a 4-7 record right now. Instead, 1-10. Got to figure some things out. But I don't think it's too late. Maybe obviously there's the top of Ruby League being as strong as it is, but because that number 5 slot is held by a 4-7 team, with some proper wins and some proper adjustments, Lentomas can easily make a playoff push. It is very much possible. Moving on to the weekly stats leaders. As you can see, New Moon Island dominates the charts this week. Aforementioned Iron Moth, first in KOs, points per game, and KOs per game. Not a surprise at all. But a lot of other Mons sitting up there as well. It was a very despicable week, so to speak. For KOs, Reggie Drago of Treasure Town tied with Iron Moth with 14. It's nice to see Reggie Drago back to its ways after being completely absent season 4. Again, this is by all measures the second greatest Mon in NWBA history in Gen 8. So it's nice to see this thing return to its spot at the top of the list. Thunder's Eye, again, Pokemon of the Week in Sapphire Division, had 13 KOs. Claybor goes back to near top of the charts with 12 KOs, and Zapdos of Lentama is putting up 12. Zapdos hasn't really gotten that much playing time this week, but was able to, some bans got redistributed, and Zapdos was able to put together a pretty good performance. For assists, the ever-present Yuxi, the enabler, so to speak, 15. That is the most that any mon has gotten, I believe, in any week so far this season. Overquill of Mount Hokulani, putting up 8. Pretty damn good. Interesting to note, now that we are halfway through the season, there are some milestones that might need to be getting thought about in that elusive 2020 club. Overquill very much on pace to get there. Glamora for Humalau and Landorus T for Newbark, sitting with 7 assists. Pretty damn good week for those two. And lastly, you have a few mons tied at 6 assists. Assists is never really a strong week. But, 6 assists not bad. If you play 6 games, that's an assist per week. That's more than fine. Iron Moth again topping for points. Regidrago in second with 24. Thunder's Eye in third with 23. Weavile and Mew both putting up 20 points. Again, this was a pick your poison week for New Moon Island. Was really able to get the offense started with any mon, and as a result has 3 mons that really just kind of ran through the charts. And as a result, top 3 in points per game, all New Moon Island. Moth, Weavile, Mew, all putting up more than 5 points per game, an insane rate. Volcanion, another mon that gets banned fairly often, but when it doesn't, it gets to go to work. 3.7, which is very good. And maybe the most surprising appearance by any mon in the stats leaderboard all season, Houndstone, an absolutely defensive mon at 3.2 points per game. We say it all the time, right? Matchups matter, and sometimes you get a certain mon that gets a really good matchup, and for whatever reason, Houndstone was able to put up a lot of points this week and is on the points per game leaderboard. Weird, but it happens. Kills per game, same top 3 for New Moon Island. Volcanion at 4th, and Thunder's Eye coming in at 5th. So, again, a lot of turnover, but we see a few more old faces than we did last week. Yuxi for assists, Kleewar for KOs, Overquill for assists, and Thunderous Eye back up on the charts after winning back-to-back Pokemon of the Week. As for league leaders through the entire season, Regidrago is now the new KO leader at 35, Kleewar right behind it at 34, Veluza and Thunderous Eye tied in 4th at 29, and lastly at 26 tied 2 mons, Zamazenta H for New Moon Island and Slowbro for Verbank. For total assists, Yuxi now has a dominant lead with 36, is on pace to break the record for most assists in an NWBA season. Heatran behind it at 23, already with 23 assists is pretty good. That's another mon that you need to watch out for to make that 2020 club. I believe Heatran already has 11 KOs, so very much on pace, especially if it puts together a big offensive week, which was MVP in Season 4, so we know it very much can happen. Mudsdale and Overcool tied at 3rd with 17 assists, and Bronzong still hasn't really done too much since that big week 1, but 16 assists, still good for 5th. Total deaths, Yuxi leads the charts as expected with 22. Overquill with 21. Low kicks and Lycanroc Dusk, as well as Rotom Heat, Landorus Team, and Tauros Paldean Aqua with 20. You know that the mons that play the most games are going to end up dying the most. That's just kind of reasonable, regardless of whether or not they're offensive or not. That's the way it goes. KOs per game, Volcanion and Iron Moth now both sit at 2.1 at the top of the list. Phalanx and Chestnut sit at 2.0. They were pretty much inactive this week. That's how KOs per game typically goes. And Toxtricity still hanging strong in 5th place at 1.9. Assists per game, Mally City still rocks the top of the charts with that at 1.8 and 1.6 for Bronzong and Corbin respectively. Yuxi now moves up to 1.4, 3rd place. Heatran at 4th with 1.2, and Mudsdale in 5th at 1.0. Pretty important to note that in previous seasons, normally after the first 2 or 3 Mons, assists per game normally fall completely off. So the fact that we're halfway through the season and we still have 5 Mons that are averaging more than assists per game, I think it's pretty good. As far as points per game goes, Iron Moth now tops that list at 3.8. Chestnut sits at second at 3.7. Volcanion now up to third at 3.6. Toxtricity at 3.4. And Dragonite of Humalao at 3.3. In terms of games played, Overcoil now leads the chart at 27. Yuxi and Veluza tied in second with 25, as well as Iron Treads for Iron Valiant. And Cleavor sitting at 24 in fifth. As far as matches banned, Iron Valiant is now the clubhouse leader, standalone with 9 for Veilstone. Again, extremely reasonable. That's 9 out of 11 sets played. Walking Wake and Volcanion tied with 8. Enamorous Eye and Golden Go tied at 4th place with 7. None of these mons are surprising whatsoever. That being said, Enamorous Eye will probably fall off this list considering that it now has a great teammate in King Gambit. We talked about that last week, the dynamic that creates for Verbank. But I think every other mon on this list is still going to remain pretty high on the matches banned leaderboard. As far as total points, Cleavor still has the lead with 66. Makes sense because of all the assists it has. Reggie Drago sitting at second with 60. Thunderous Eye now in third place with 52. Veluza with 46, and Arcanine H of Mali City right behind it at 45. So, Mali City, 2 really, really strong hitters. Obviously, there are some other mons that are sitting around the 40 range that are right behind it. So, based on how certain weeks go, you can see some movement there. KDA ratio, Gogoat and Dragonite still sit at the top with 7. Neither got any playing time this past week. Makes sense. Chestnut sits at second with 6. Typhlosion H at 4.75 in fourth, and Moltres of Sunny Shore at 4.33. Very interesting. You know, Moltres is normally more of a defensive mon, but that being said, so is Chestnut and so is Gogoat. So, you know, if the mon comes out and gets kills and doesn't die, then what can you do about it? And then lastly, usage rate. Cleavor sits at the top at 45.8. I'd like to think Cleavor is going to stay near, is going to hold down that number 1 spot probably for the rest of the season. Baskin Legion F sitting at number 2 for Lavender Town. Iron Tread sitting at third with 42.9. Zoroark H for Alfrenada in fourth at 41.8. And lastly, Dondozo for Humalao City at 40. So, we move on to free agency moves. Another pretty active week of free agency. 12 decisions were made. Lavender Town, always active, made 2 moves. First move was getting rid of Palmot for Barraskewda. I like this decision a lot. Logan, again, really leaning into the Rain offense. And Barraskewda has always been really strong in Rain. Bandit Swift Swim outspeeds and hits really hard, and because it has access to flip turn again, it is back to its, you know, menacing ways, because you can hit a flip turn and still get good damage and get a pivot. As a result, Lavender Town releases Floatzel because Barraskewda is just a better version of Floatzel, and instead opts for regular Tauros. So I was a bit surprised by this one. We'll see what Logan is hooking up with that one. You know, we know what Tauros does. Sear Force Life Orb hits fairly strong, but it just doesn't have the power relative to the rest of its, you know, rest of the league. But we'll see if Logan can cook something up with that. Lava Rage opts to get rid of Serena for Electrode H. Now has the fastest mon on any roster in Electrode H. You know, keeps the grass type, now has an electric type as well. I mean, you know, fastest pivot in the game. So because of that, you can typically opt for more HP or more power, or whatever you want to do with Electrode H. It can set screens, it can be annoying. Something like a Specs Chloroblast, or, you know, Solar Beam in the Sun can be pretty strong. You have to remember that Lava Ridge does have Torkoal and Walking Awake and Screamtail, so you'll probably see a lot of Sun, and I think Electrode H can fit on that team pretty well. As a result of that transaction, Verbank gets rid of Lurantis and goes for Serena. Better hazard removal Lurantis is just not really that great outside of defog. Serena can rapid spin, but it's got some good power. Queenly Majesty is a really interesting ability, being able to block priority. And Serena's a pretty strong mon, so I think that will, it's just a better fit for that role for Burbank. Sunny Shore continuing its shuffling around in the PU tier, gets rid of Haunter. Didn't really see the field that much, didn't really put up much when it was there. Instead, goes for Mischievous. Terra types are Stab, Ghost, and non-Stab Fairy. Again, it makes sense. Ghost Fairy is just, it's automatic. It covers everything. It makes total sense. We'll see what he can do with Mischievous. I don't really think this is going to fare much better than Haunter does. But I know that we've seen Kami use Wisp Hex a lot with Miss Magus, so maybe that's what Spike's going for. So Mistress probably running more EVO Light than the Specs or Scarf that Haunter was constantly running. Veilstone, pretty surprising decision, gets rid of Weird Deer, who, hasn't always worked out, but when it has, it's been very fruitful for Veilstone. Instead, opts for Flareon, Terra Stab Fire, and non-Terra Stab Grass. I think just wanted to switch up the pace. Flareon has always been a mon that struggles because its move pool isn't very great. Its stats don't really mesh well with it. And then it's like, oh, well, it has Guts, but it's a fire type, so you can't use Flame Orb, you have to use Toxic Orb. That being said, being able to Terra into something that isn't fire type fits it a lot better. Moving on to the only trade this week, only one. Trade deadline passed, so there are no more trades for the rest of the season. Sunny Shore opts to send the Dunsparce to Newburgh Town for Salazzle. This one was a weird trade to me. I thought the Dunsparce is a pretty solid mon. It's been working fairly well for Spike. Very bulky. It was Terra Water. You could sit on a lot of mons with this mon. I thought it was weird that Spike would opt to get rid of it, but I guess he figured he already has enough bulky mons. He's got Umbreon and such. He's got Mudsdale. He figured I would rather free up the spot to get something a little bit more offensive, and I guess that makes sense. So he opts to get Salazzle from Newburgh Town. This will give Newburgh Town some more bulk, which I think was definitely needed. So I like this trade for sure from the Newburgh Town side of things. And then for the other half of the decisions, as you can see, there were already some walkbacks. Sunny Shore immediately getting rid of Salazzle. For Hariyama, he opted to make a Terra Captain. Terra Stab fighting, non-Terra Stab Steel. I like that one a lot because it covers fighting, or covers Psychic and Fairy, as well as the fact that Hariyama has priority in Bullet Punch, so a, Terra boosted Bullet Punch is gonna hit pretty damn hard. Whether this thing is Guts or AV or whatever, Hariyama can do a lot of different things, so I can understand why Spike wanted to do that. So at the end of the day, they didn't really abandon the bulk too much, but instead just opted to slap some more offense on it in addition. Veilstone walked back the Flareon decision, decided, I would rather go for a different PU. Opts for Cacturn, Terra Stab Dark, non-Terra Stab Ghost. Cacturn is a bit of a weird one, but it's got Water Absorb, and it's got, some solid attacking stats. In the right matchup, I think this thing can be pretty annoying to deal with, so I can understand the decision, especially because Flareon, you have to try so hard to make the Guts set work, and if you're not running Guts, then this mon is extremely bad. New Moon Island continues to go all the way in, gets rid of Salt Stack for Indeedee. So it has a terrain setter now. That's really, really gross, considering that, he's got these very fast, very strong setup mons that normally, if you have a strong priority user, you can pick them off and not have to worry about it too much. Now he has a terrain setter, and you have to play around that, and that is a lot more annoying to deal with. So I like that decision a lot. Salt Stack didn't get any playing time anyway, so I think it was pretty reasonable. Lava Ridge opts to get rid of Frostlass for Glastrier. Again, Glastrier, one of those mons that on paper sounds really good. It's got amazing stats and everything, but mono ice and doesn't have anything else super outstanding, super slow. We'll see if Lava Ridge can make it work. We'll see. Frostlass got a fair bit of usage from Avery too, so I was a bit surprised by this one. Newburgh Town immediately opts to get Frostlass, drops to Decidueye, decides this thing didn't get any playing time. I have no reason to have it on my roster. Instead goes for Frostlass. Frostlass has a little bit of mix, right? You can run Band and Specs or Scarf, or it can be, Sash Lead. So, maybe just decides, hey, this Glimmet thing isn't working out the way I figured it would. So maybe get something that might be a little bit more reliable in threatening things that want to check a Sash Lead in Frostlass. So don't blame the decision at all. And lastly, Lentamas gets rid of Mouse Hold. Tried to make it work, played in a few sets, but that Population Bomb stuff just wasn't really working out. Instead opts to get Hawlucha. I think if you're just comparing setup sweeper to setup sweeper, or late game cleaner to late game cleaner, Hawlucha probably is a better option. Unburden is a really, really good ability. So I can understand why he would want to swap out Mouse Hold for Hawlucha to get some better offense on his team. So, all that being said, we move into our final segment. Let's look ahead to week 4. It is a mirror of week 1, so you will see the first round of intra-divisional or intra-league rematches. No interleague matches this time around, so it's literally the week 1 schedule. Just, you're going to see different bands. So, you're going to see some really, really, really hard-hitting matches. Tonight on Versus Seeker, we've got 2 bangers for you. Sunny Shore and New Moon Island. Again, those 2 teams sit at 2 and 3 in the Ruby League, both 9 and 2. So this is massive. New Moon Island won fairly convincingly 2-0 the first time around. We'll see what Spike opts to do this time around. And Lavender Town and Humalau, that's number 1 seed in Humalau versus number 5 seed in Lavender Town. If Logan can get this upset win, that would be huge for him. Otherwise, Humalau can extend the lead further on the Sapphire League if Kobo can get that win. And again, because there's no interleague matchup, there's no big interleague matchup to watch out for. Instead, what I have highlighted is 2 very important 3-ways that are going to happen over the course of the week. Over in Ruby League, those top 3 teams that have a very big gap on the rest of the league, they'll have to play each other again. It was a 3-way split, basically. Sunny Shore beat Akala Island, who beat New Moon Island, who beat Sunny Shore. So they're going to get to run it back. We'll see how it plays out. I think if there is a team out of these 3 that can go 2-0 in those matchups this week, then they will be the clubhouse favorite to take the 1 seed in what is a very, 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 very competitive race for the Ruby League ribbon. Obviously Akala Island has that 1-game lead, so if they're the ones that go 2-0, then they benefit the most. But obviously if Sunny Shore and New Moon Island can pull that off, then they'll be sitting pretty. And obviously if they all split again, then we're right back in the same situation, and weeks 5 and 6 are going to matter that much more for these teams. Over in the Sapphire League, Humalau, the 1 seed, gets to play Burbank, the 4, and Lavender Town, the 5. Again, Sapphire League looks fairly set in terms of the teams that play each other, but this matters a lot for positioning. Humalau only has that half a game lead on Mali City, and Burbank and Lavender Town both sitting at 6 and 5. With Mount Hokulani only 1 game ahead at 7 and 4. If one of those 2 teams can grab a 2-0, there's a chance they can play themselves out of the wild card and just into the bracket properly. And, of course, every team should aspire to try to avoid that best of 1 no bans wild card match at all costs. Obviously, getting into the playoffs is great by any means, but you really want to shoot for that top 3 seed. And so there's a lot of ground that could be made up by Burbank or Lavender Town should they pull it off. And again, if Humalau sweeps, then tighten the grip on the Sapphire League. So, with that being said, that wraps up this week's episode of Wonder Room. Thank you all for watching. In just a little bit, we will transition over to Versus Seeker, and we can bring you those hot matches. Thank you for all those who watch on YouTube, who are watching on Twitch. Subscribers are going up. You love to see it. Followers are going up. You love to see it. Once again, appreciate each and every single one of you. Thank you all for watching, and we will be back next week with more Wonder Woman.